You're listening to Murder Not Murdering with Erin
and Autumn,
a true crime podcast about murder and murdering.
But we are not murderers.
All right, welcome back to Murder Not Murdering with Erin and
Autumn.
Autumn is here. Yay!
I'm here, everyone.
We're so happy to have you back, although she is having some technical difficulties today.
Yes, some major technical difficulty.
Forgive the fact that Autumn is calling in today and our recording might sound a little different or it may not. We're going to see how the editing sounds at the end.
Yeah, sorry to give that responsibility to you, my friend.
Yes. So Autumn will be reacting to my case today as her computer is holding her case hostage.
This is accurate.
I do want to take a second to acknowledge that yesterday, as many of you may have seen all across the news, there was a shooting here in Seattle. We're both okay. We have a festival that happens every year called the Bite of Seattle, and it is a foodie festival for folks to go. And yesterday at 6 p.m., there was a shooting there. Now, we have more information that they have released that they have arrested a 15-year-old person and there is another person that they suspect was also involved. It looks like they were shooting at each other and the victims were unfortunately innocent bystanders. And now we're still waiting to get more information on that. But I wanted to acknowledge the victims and what had just happened because it's been everywhere you look right now. That's all over across our news. And more press conferences are coming out. To me, what I'm seeing is they said the security was very lax at the bite this year. So there were no metal detectors around. People didn't see security, although I do know there were some Seattle police officers that were walking around during the event and ran to the scene when it happened. Unfortunately, 3 people have died, 2 people at the scene, and 1 person in the hospital. There are, I believe, 4 other victims, might be 5, including a 2-year-old. That were gunshot victims. So far, all have been released from the hospital except for the 2-year-old who is in stable condition. So it's just news that's happening right now in Seattle, and it's kind of crazy and kind of scary. And the fact that it happened at 6 p.m. on a Sunday is just insane to me because you just never would have expected that anything like that would happen, especially at such a low-key sort of food festival.
It's like a folk festival. Like there's hippies and stuff down there, like peace and love. It's just weird that such violence broke out.
It's so strange and not common to hear.
Yeah.
I really don't think so. I go to a lot of festivals and events all across Seattle and I've never encountered anything like it. So it's just kind of scary and I feel for the victims and all the people that were there. This was a really traumatic moment for the people that were there. So I know that there'll be lasting effects from that. So it's just really unfortunate and really sad news from Seattle right now. But anyway, we will get on to our case, but I just thought I would touch on that as it is a hot topic right now going on in our city that we live so close to. But outside of that, last week I did something so far outside of my comfort zone.
I listened and loved it so much.
But not the case.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, I was talking about the case. What are you talking about?
Well, I went to an event, a networking event for podcasters, which is really not my thing. I'm a social person. I will say that. I am a very social person, but I am not someone to go to an event and just start walking up to people and talking. That is not my jam. And I was by myself, so it was,
I know.
just felt awkward.
I wanted to be there, but like Erin said, we had a death in our family, so I was
and it was also
home.
a weekday and, so there was a lot of factors to why we both couldn't be there, but holy shit, it's hard for me to step outside of my comfort zone. I did meet a lot of people who were just starting out in the podcasting world, so that was kind of neat. I'm not sure that I got a lot from that, but I guess they're going to be doing another event in a couple months that will be
Ooh.
about niche markets.
Oh,
So,
that's cool.
as we are in a niche market and a
Yes.
saturated one at that, I
Yes,
might
we
I
are.
might I might go back to that. So, we will see, but that was super outside of my comfort zone. Of course, the first thing I did was stand in the back of the room with a glass of wine and just listen to the speakers. But I did meet some people and I did actually talk, so that was good, to other people, human beings, so that was a nice thing.
Proud of
Um,
you.
but yes, last week was a case all by my lonesome, and, Lorena Bobbitt, that was
I
the one.
loved it. I loved it.
I was glad that if I was gonna do a solo one, I already had, like, a long story already in the bank, so I was hopefully kept you guys entertained throughout it. I
I
know
loved it. I
I know
loved
Autumn texted me and said, "I'm so glad you said 3-inch penis because
it.
it's the facts.
It needed to be called out, okay? Because
He's
it
an
just did.
asshole."
Yes,
But
I mean, not that we're saying that anyone deserves their penis to be cut
no,
off,
not even
but
a 3-inch one.
no, but the fact she called out the 3-inch penis was the
I had to
icing on the cake. I just
listen,
died. It was pretty funny.
I just have to stick to facts, and
Yes, it was
that's what it
fact.
was. It was a
It was
fact.
factual.
It was
That's right,
factual.
Erin. It was
Mhm.
factual.
That's what I'm doing, y'all.
Rooted in facts.
Exactly. But I do hope you guys enjoyed that case. I personally enjoyed writing it. I think it's so fascinating because I think a lot of people don't remember that there were 2 trials.
Yes.
There's 2 trials. There's also I mean, I didn't know that he was still writing her to this day. I mean, what the
That was
fuck?
new information to me as well.
Yeah, that documentary, Lorena, on Amazon is so fucking good. I'm telling you, that is the one that, like, it's the most in-depth, documentary I think I've ever seen on that case. So, I mean, I knew a lot of the other stuff, but that was just like, oh my god. Anyways, we're gonna get on to my case this week because I have a fucking crazy case. And Autumn is just going to be reacting to me. She doesn't know what the case is at all. And this is, it has some twists and turns in it that I don't know if you're ready for because you think that the craziest part is the crime itself, and it is not.
I'm ready. Lay it
Okay.
on me.
So this week, I am doing the Louisville Torture House of 1924.
Shit. And it's an old-timey crimey.
And I'm back to my old ways, guys. Watch out. All
I'm
right.
ready. I'm ready.
Sometimes the most terrifying places aren't hidden deep in the woods or abandoned at the end of a lonely road. Sometimes they're rented for cash, furnished in broad daylight, and occupied without anyone suspecting a thing. There was nothing remarkable about the house. It sat quietly among other homes in Louisville, Kentucky. Neighbors passed by without giving it a second glance. Children were playing nearby. Streetcars rattled through the city. Vendors sold newspapers on busy corners. But inside that house, however, someone had assembled what police would later describe as one of the most disturbing crime scenes that they have ever encountered. There's a mattress on the floor, leather straps, handcuffs, ropes, medical instruments, chemicals, and enough supplies to imprison a man for days.
Kind of sounds like someone's like fantasy.
Well,
I guess we're getting into it.
you will find out. When officers finally entered the house, they found blood everywhere. A man lay dead with multiple gunshot wounds. Nearby, another man, dirty, exhausted, and barely able to stand, still had a handcuff hanging from one wrist, and he was running from the scene. At first glance, it seemed obvious. One man is dead, another man admitted to pulling the trigger, open and shut. Except nothing about this case is simple. Because the man holding the gun wasn't the villain, he was the prisoner, and the dead man had spent days trying to destroy him. This is the story of Richard Heaton and William Gates, the story that the newspapers dubbed the Louisville Torture House. A story so sensational that readers questioned whether it could possibly even be true. And yet, beneath the lurid headlines, investigators uncovered something arguably more frightening than fiction. Not a serial killer, not a secret society, not an elaborate conspiracy. Just one man's obsession spiraling into a catastrophic violence and an ending that no one saw coming. Louisville in 1924 was thriving. The city had become one of the economic centers of Kentucky, balancing Southern traditions with rapid modernization. Downtown banks flourished. Automobiles increasingly shared the streets with horse-drawn wagons. Jazz filled through the clubs despite prohibition, and fortunes could be made or lost in a single afternoon on the stock market. Among the city's respected businessmen was Richard Heaton. By nearly every public measure, Richard appeared successful. He worked as a stockbroker. He dressed impeccably. He moved comfortably among Louisville's business elite. Friends described him as intelligent and ambitious. His home was on South First Street, where he lived with his charming and beautiful wife and his 2 children, a boy and a girl. But appearances rarely tell the whole story. Behind closed doors, Richard Heaton had become consumed by something that destroys families as effectively as any weapon: jealousy. Not ordinary jealousy, not the passing insecurity that visits most relationships from time to time. This was obsessive, relentless, all-consuming, the kind that twists ordinary events into evidence. Richard became convinced his wife Mary was having an affair. And to Richard, evidence no longer mattered. Belief had become certainty, and certainty had become obsession, and one name surfaced repeatedly in Richard's mind: William Gates. Who was William Gates?
Yeah, tell me about him.
Oh, we're getting into it. He wasn't Richard's enemy. He was known to be a capable businessman with connections around Louisville's commercial circles. Accounts described him as respectable and well-liked, with no reputation for violence. Whatever relationship existed between Gates and the Heatons appears to have been social and even professional. They had all known each other their entire lives. To Richard, however, Gates had become the center of an elaborate fantasy. Every unexplained absence, every delayed conversation, every perceived slight, everything circled back to Gates. People tried to reassure him. Friends reportedly dismissed his accusations. But paranoia had a way of feeding itself. His own wife, Mary, talked about how obsessive Richard had become, and she was frightened of him. And the more others denied it, the more convinced Richard became that everyone else is lying too. If Gates denied the affair, that's proof of guilt. If Mary had denied it, she's just protecting him. If friends disagreed, then they had joined into a conspiracy. It became a closed system. Every answer became more evidence. And all of this takes us to approximately 6:30 p.m. on March 8th, 1924. There's a call at the Louisville Police Department headquarters. "A man has been shot," a voice yelled over the telephone. "You'll find him at 637 South 34th Street. Police rush to the scene, and what they find at the scene is something they would never forget. They found a body on the 2nd floor in the bedroom. It was lying near a mattress on the floor. Surrounding the mattress were 4 steel staples driven into the floor. The man had been fatally shot in the neck and in the heart. Witnesses said that the killer had raced from the house. Not immediately, they told police. He left only when he made sure, on a doctor's word, in fact, that the victim was dead. On the killer's wrist were still a handcuff. His body was trembling, and he was running. The dead man was Richard Heaton. He was 33 years old. Mrs. Heaton was in the house at the time of the shooting. She told police that William Gates, her husband's lifelong friend, had done the shooting. A manhunt began for Gates immediately after receiving a detailed description. Back at the scene, police gathered around the victim. Detective Lieutenant William Oltagen said, "I went back upstairs. Mrs. Heaton was still kneeling beside her husband's body. She said something that made me pinch myself to make sure I wasn't dreaming. She said her husband had held Gates as a prisoner for 2 nights and 2 days. He was chained to the floor of this room," she told us. At once, the significance of the mattress on the floor, the staples, it all dawned on me. Never will I forget that room and its contents. Dr. Schoonover examined the surgical equipment in the room. He remarked of what good quality they were. And he said whoever had selected them must have had more than an ordinary layman's knowledge of such things. They found a surgeon's knife, a pair of forceps, a hemostat, about a dozen suture ligatures, 2 to 3 instrument trays, a surgeon's apron, rubber sheets, and rubber gloves. There was also a quantity of bandages, medical gauze, absorbent cotton, disinfectant, and a huge can of chloroform.
That's interesting that they had disinfectant when they were planning on killing the person.
Maybe they were trying to clean up after. I don't know.
Interesting.
But it was a complete outfit for performing an operation. The man who had planned the operation apparently had also planned to remove the body. In the case that his victim had died, he had provided 3 large watertight boxes, a large butcher knife, and a very sharp hatchet. So it sounds like might have dismembered had, he not gotten away.
Yeah, if he had more time.
They also found a large quantity of sulfuric acid. So it was quite the gruesome sight.
This is right up your alley.
I know. The police searched the house and a small garage in the rear. They had found several guns, including 2 revolvers and automatics and a ton of ammunition. So what had been planned to happen? What could have caused this level of violence? So the first person they interview is Mrs. Heaton, Richard's wife. She was pale, given the scene she was just in.
No shit.
It was a little hard for her to get started, but once she began, she started talking. She told detectives that she had eloped with Richard some 8 years ago when she was only 15 years old. They seemed to have lived a happy and normal life. Then suddenly, without warning, her husband began to accuse her of being intimate with Gates, whom they had both known since childhood. At times, Mrs. Heaton said, his manner and the things he said almost became unbearable. Of course, she denied the accusations, but Richard, without any cause or reason, continued to berate her. This state of affairs continued for 4 years. In fact, up until the day before the shooting, he was still insistent she was having this affair. And I wish I could say that everything you've heard up to this moment was the craziest parts of this story, but it's only scratching the surface. Because 4 weeks before this incident, Richard had hired a private detective by the name of Jenny Moore of Chicago. Her duties were to accompany Mrs. Heaton whenever she left the house, to answer all of her phone calls, and to prevent Mrs. Heaton from using the telephone herself.
What?
Yes. He hired a private detective, to literally hold his wife hostage. I mean, she could leave places, but only if she left with that woman.
Like a chaperone.
Sort of, except for she wasn't, this was to fuck with her,
Yeah.
And police spoke to Mrs. Moore, and she verified everything that Mrs. Heaton told police. So on that Thursday, of the event that brought Richard's demise. He had rented a house on 34th Street, and he told his wife it was for the express purpose of taking Gates there to punish him.
Okay, and she was cool with that?
She was scared of him, so I think she just wasn't going to stop. She said, I was powerless to prevent my husband from carrying out his plan. You see, I was practically held prisoner in my own home. I mean, she's kind of not wrong. She
Kind of,
literally
yeah.
had someone always there watching her, too.
True.
So, Friday, the day before the shooting, Richard came home and he told his wife that he still was holding Gates. She said he laughed when he told me about it, and I was more frightened than ever. I mean, he was maniacal.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
Yeah. So Saturday afternoon, Mrs. Heaton, not having heard from her husband since the day before, was frantic. She was worried about what he may have done or what he was going to do. So she slipped away from Mrs. Moore, the private detective, called a cab, and drove to the house where Gates was. Her husband met her at the door and told her to come in, but cautioned his wife to be quiet. This is all so fucked.
Right?
He looked terrible, Mrs. Heaton said. He seemed to be under a terrible strain and plainly showed the lack of 2 nights' sleep. I felt sorry for him, and I told him so, but he only laughed. I asked him if he had Bill Gates upstairs, and he said, yes, I'm giving him the scare of his life. I bet he won't bother either of us again. Mrs. Heaton.
Wait, his name was Bill Gates?
William Gates, Bill Gates, yeah.
How come I just am now
putting that together?
Putting that together. When you said it, I was like, wait a second, Bill Gates?
Bill Gates, yeah, held captive.
Mm-hmm.
So Mrs. Heaton begged her husband to let his prisoner go and to give up his mad plan. Richard absolutely refused to listen. They talked for a few minutes, and then Richard said he had to go back upstairs. He told his wife, I have to watch Bill constantly for fear he might get away. I guess he had been gone about 2 or 3 minutes when suddenly, and this is her talking, I heard a voice say, don't shoot. It was hardly more than a whisper. Then I heard 2 shots fired in rapid succession. As I started up the stairway, Bill Gates came running down. Sorry, it makes me giggle.
I know. That's me too, especially living in Seattle. It's just undeniable.
He called and asked who was there. I replied, Mary Lee. He didn't stop. He passed me and said, I've shot Dick and I'm going to get a doctor. I continued upstairs, she said to detectives, and I found my husband in the rear bedroom, lying on the mattress, just as you first saw him. He was still breathing and trying to say something, but I couldn't understand what he was trying to say. In a few minutes, some man came in and told me he was a doctor. He looked at Dick. I asked him if he was going to die. He said he didn't think so. Just then, Bill called from downstairs and asked the doctor the same question. Then another man came in, she continued. He looked at Dick and said he was dead. Just then I heard Bill call from downstairs, and the man called back and told him my husband was dead. I haven't seen or heard from Bill since. I knelt down and kissed Dick. I didn't know what to do, so I just sat there by his side. Detectives now had to verify that everything Mrs. Heaton had been telling them was the truth. Then a man claiming to be Richard's business partner was in the outer office of the police station, and he said he wanted to see the chief. He was brought in immediately. His name was William A. Fisher, and he was a member of the firm Heaton and Fisher. He
was
said
there like no other names outside of William and
no, and Richard.
and Richard, William and Richard.
Well, there's a Frank. We'll get to him.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so this guy comes in. He said he just heard about the murder and wanted to tell them everything he knew about the affair. He said Richard had been acting strangely. He also said that Richard told him that several men were trying to break up his home, and for the last year, Richard had neglected his business. He remained away from the office for long periods of time, and he failed to let his partner know where he was or how long he intended on staying away. Early in February, he had told Fisher, "There's only one man left, and as soon as I have attended to him, all my troubles will be over and I will return to the office." What a business partner. He told Fisher about the house that he had rented and said he was going to take the man there and scare him to death. "I want to impress on his mind that he is never to cross my path again." Apparently, that's when Fisher begged him to give up this crazy plot for revenge. He told police, "I told him it was dangerous and that he was only going to get himself in trouble. He refused to listen and told me if I ever breathed a word to anyone about his plans, I would have to answer to him." People seem very scared of Richard Heaton.
Mm-hmm.
He said that on that Friday, Hyde Conrad, another name, there you go, Hyde Conrad brought him a note from Richard requesting that Fisher come to the 34th Street address that afternoon. "I went down Friday afternoon," Fisher said, "hoping to bring Dick to his senses. He looked terrible. I could see that he was very nervous and he was laboring under a strain. He told me that he had had no sleep for 3 days and asked me to stay in the house while he went home to get some sleep. This I refused to do. Then he asked me if I would just stay for a while he went home to see his wife. He promised he would only be gone for a half hour and begged so hard that I finally agreed." You're agreeing to babysit a hostage. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
"He took me upstairs in the back room, lying on a mattress, his arms and legs tied to the floor. A cover over his face was a man. Dick told me that he had put the cover over the man's face because the prisoner was ashamed of what he had done and did not want his identity known. He assured me that the man was securely tied and could not get loose. Then he left. After he had gone, I noticed that the man was moving, as if he was trying to ease his evidently aching muscles. I asked him if I could do anything for him, but he didn't answer. So I just sat there. In about 30 minutes, I heard Dick come in, and I went downstairs. Again, I begged him to let the man go. I told him he was sure to get in trouble, and he laughed at my fears and assured me again that I'm only giving him a good scare and I'm not going to harm him in the least."
Okay.
While I was in the room upstairs, I saw a hat and a coat that I thought that I recognized. I asked Dick if this man wasn't Bill Gates. He said it might be and laughed. Then I pleaded with him harder than ever. I would have done anything to keep Dick out of trouble, but he wouldn't listen. He asked me if I would come back that night, and I told him I might. Then I left. After he left the house, he decided to go back to his office. He chose not to call the police at the time because Richard swore no harm was going to come to the man. However, the man was tied to a bed, and he knew Richard hadn't slept in days, seemed manic, and there was surgical equipment everywhere, so
yeah, I don't know if I would have believed him.
I wouldn't be betting on Richard not doing something fucking crazy, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, me too.
But he did say he was going to go back and check on what happened in the evening and try to see if he could get Richard to let the prisoner go. Fisher continued his statement to police. He said, "I went down about 7 o'clock that evening on Friday. There was no one there but Dick and the man upstairs. I argued with Dick for about an hour, and nothing seemed to have any effect upon him. He would only laugh and swear he was not going to harm him, only scare him. I gave up and I started to leave. Just as I was going, I happened to look upstairs, and there, sitting on the bed in the rear room, handcuffed with his head in his hands, was Bill Gates. I became almost frantic with my pleading, but Richard remained adamant. So I left, I went home, and I did not go back. Someone called me tonight and told me about the shooting. I'm sorry I didn't notify you yesterday of what was going on, but at the time, I thought it was best to leave Dick alone. I feel as though I am responsible in a way for his death." And I would have to agree because he is not responsible, but his call to
Right.
the police could have saved time
Yes.
and possibly his partner's life.
Right.
Just saying. So now they know who's involved, a possible motive, but they were still missing the most important witness, William Gates. If this was a case of self-defense, then why had Bill run away? The fingerprint reports just came in. Unsurprisingly, they found Richard's prints all over the house and on the surgical equipment, also on the revolvers. This led them to think that maybe he had committed this kidnapping and crime alone. However, the patrolman picked up Hyde Conrad, the man that delivered the note to Fisher, and brought him in. Unfortunately, he didn't have a whole lot to say, but he said that he had known Richard Heaton and William Gates for some time. That Thursday, Richard had called him and asked him to come to his office about 6 p.m. When he arrived, he introduced a man named Frank. I say that in quotations.
Oh, that's not his real name.
You'll find out. He was told to go outside and wait in the car, and when Richard would leave in his vehicle, Conrad was to follow him. After Conrad had waited a while, 3 men came out and entered Richard's car, and they left. Conrad followed as instructed. They went down the road to the west end and stopped in an alleyway. The occupants of the car got out and went into a house. When Conrad went inside, the man, Frank, was in the living room. Richard and the other man had disappeared. As we know now, they were upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
He said, I asked Frank what was going on, and he told me that Richard had some man upstairs who had stolen some stuff from him. He told me everything was going to be all right and not to worry. About 10 o'clock, Richard came down and told Conrad to take Frank to the 10th Street Depot and buy him a ticket to Indianapolis, then go to the Willard Hotel to settle the bill for room 342. He continued telling the police, I took the man to the station, but I did not go to the hotel. I was worried about it all, and I went back to the house to see if I could find out what was going on. Richard then told Conrad that he had some man who had caused him some trouble, but that he shouldn't worry, as he was just having a good talk with him.
Just a talk.
Yeah, when you tie him to the floor first, though.
Mm-hmm.
So
That's how I talk to people.
So this is weird to me, but Conrad said that he spent the night there. And the next morning, he told Richard he was going to leave and not return.
Okay.
I don't know how these people are not questioning Richard a lot when he's holding a man captive.
Why are you staying the night and then saying, okay, never mind, I'm going to leave and never come back?
And also, why are they not trying to stop him? I don't know why no one's calling the police. This seems so crazy.
Yeah, this is super crazy.
So the detective lieutenant working on the case got a call from the station that Gates had turned himself in and he was ready to talk. He was pale and nervous. And I am now going to read his account of what happened. Are you ready for this?
Ready as I'll ever be.
I had known Dick Heaton since childhood. In fact, we grew up together and played together as youths. I did not know of his fears, his worry, his suspicion, or his plot. I had been away from Louisville for some time. Nothing, however, interfered with our friendship. Thursday night, 2 days before the shooting, Dick called me over the phone and asked me to come to his office. There was nothing unusual about that, so I went. Just as I stepped into the office, I was grabbed. It was so sudden I couldn't move. I didn't know what to do, so I just did nothing. I couldn't have gained anything by resisting because I could have been overpowered easily. So I said nothing. I was taken to an automobile outside. A big man was watching me, Frank. He walked along the side to the machine. But even if he had not been there, I couldn't have done much. I was handcuffed, and the cuffs were placed on me as soon as I was grabbed. After a long ride, we went to an alley, into a small garage. I was led into the house. Dick took me upstairs to a back room. He tied me up. And then he left. While he was gone, I thought how unlucky I was to have lost my pistol. It had been taken from me before I was handcuffed. Dick came back after a while, and I could see he was bent on mischief. I had sized up all of the instruments. The sharp hatchet, the boxes, the rubber sheets. "Get down," he commanded. I was forced to get on my knees, and then he made me lay flat on the floor. He stretched my 2 legs apart and fastened my ankles to the staples, leaving me spread out across the floor. I saw him then take down the chloroform. He got a funnel. He placed some cotton on it and poured out the chloroform. All the while, he was calm as a man could be. He put the funnel upside down over my nose. I saw it coming and took a deep breath. After he put the funnel in place, I held my breath for what seemed like hours. Gradually, though, I relaxed my body and closed my eyes. I tried to feign unconsciousness, but apparently he succeeded. He took the funnel away. In a moment, he unbuttoned my coat. Then it dawned on me what kind of torture I was about to undergo. I couldn't move. I was afraid to say a word. He unbuttoned my vest to the right side of it, and I felt something glide down. Then I remembered it was a small pistol, a Derringer that I had forgotten about. They had overlooked it. This little pistol, not much bigger than a toy, brought renewed courage. I had waited for a very short time and then decided something had to be done. I began to mumble. Dick stooped over me and cooed at me like a baby, coaxing me to tell him what I wanted to tell. "Go on, tell me all about it. Don't be afraid," he said. I saw my chance. I mumbled so he could make it out. I told him that I had written several letters. I told him I had said that in the letters that Dick Heaton would be responsible for any harm that would befall me. I told him that I wrote that Dick Heaton meant to murder me. He coaxed me some more, and I told him I sent the letters to my aunt in Indiana, with whom I live, and instructed her to send them to the police if anything happened to me. This stopped him. He buttoned back up my clothes and left me presumably unconscious. You can bet I was mighty glad when he left the room.
No shit.
I didn't think I had long to live, but I didn't give up hope entirely. Friday afternoon, he brought Fisher, his business partner, into the room. At the time, I was laying on the mattress on the floor. My arms and legs are tied, and a cover was spread across my face. Dick said he was going, and he left the room. Fisher said he would step out of the room and give me a chance to make myself comfortable. He thought I didn't want my identity known. I wasn't sure Heaton had gone. In fact, I thought he might be just standing outside the door. I knew he would kill me if he heard me talking, and I didn't want to risk letting Fisher remove the cover on my face. I knew he wouldn't be able to think fast enough if Dick suddenly came through the door, so I said nothing. Friday night, Dick took me in an automobile to his office. He placed a pistol by my side and told me to call my aunt in Logansport and tell her to send the letters that I had written to Heaton and Fisher's brokerage office in Louisville. My aunt must have thought I was crazy, for I had not written any such letters.
Oh, no.
However, I obeyed instructions. After that, I was taken back to my prison. Saturday, I thought all day long, my time has come. Dick was going to enter the room and look at me. I pretended I was asleep. Then he would go over and start messing with instruments, all while smiling to himself. So fucking creepy.
So creepy.
My nerves were near a breaking point. That night, I told him to take me to the washroom. I told him I couldn't stand it any longer, and he agreed. He'd been held captive for days, so I'm sure there was a lot of mess going on. Anyway,
yeah.
When we returned, he prepared to chain me back up to the staples. He had to unlock my handcuffs, and I saw that my chance had come. I got my Derringer from my vest pocket and pointed it at him. "Put him up, Dick," I commanded. "Don't waste any time." His face changed in an instant. It became chalky white. His eyes got wild. He grabbed for his gun, and I let go with both barrels. He spun around and fell. Then I knew I was free and raced from the room downstairs. Taking 3 steps at a time and hollered, "Who's there?" I heard someone open the door. Heaton's wife answered, "I didn't stop. I ran out of the house as fast as I could. As I ran out of the door, I saw a man and told him I had shot someone. I told him not to say anything. This all comes back to me now. I started running down the street and then I thought of my hat and coat. So I ran back to get them."
Can't forget that.
I ran back to get them and I started running again. All the time, I thought my brain was going to crack. I was looking for it for a minute. I thought I was going insane. I ran all the faster. I remember now that I had a loose handcuff that was dapping at my side. I didn't even try to conceal it. I don't know what was in my mind at all. All I seemed to be capable of doing was running, and I did that. I got on a streetcar and rode a couple of blocks. Then I got off. Nobody asked me any questions. Now remember, he's just standing there holding a hat and coat, and he's got a dangling handcuff, and he also is dirty and gross. So nobody said anything, though.
Probably no
Ignored
one
him.
wanted to sit next to the stinky guy.
I wouldn't.
No,
Anyway.
I'd be like, okay, just don't sit next to me, sir. Just stand over there.
He said nobody asked me any questions. I didn't even have any answers for them if they had. My mind was at a standstill. Finally, after running myself out of breath, I started for Harrods Creek, where I was visiting my father-in-law. I finally got home, rested a bit, and after talking it over with some of my relatives, I saw my mistake in running away. I made arrangements to surrender at once. No matter how long I live, I will never forget the experience. It was too horrible, too cruel for words. I had read of such plots and plans in dime novels, but I never expected to live the victim's part. I know I could never put it from my mind, but now that it's over, I am confident of being freed, and I shall attempt to forget all of it if I possibly can. I'm sorry I had to kill Dick, but I had to save my life to do it. The police took down this statement, and then they started questioning Gates. They asked why, if he wasn't suspicious of Richard Heaton, had he brought 2 guns with him to meet him? Later, they corroborated that Gates was a gun enthusiast and usually carried pistols on his person. He also had purchased a number of guns over the last few years. The chief was brought in during the questioning, and he, along with the detectives, believed that Gates was telling the truth. But they still had to place him under arrest and charge him with murder.
Oh, shit.
About the time that Gates finished his story, they had a report on the man, Frank. He was Frank Cordell, a private detective out of Indianapolis. Detectives quickly made arrangements to get a governor's extradition warrant to have Cordell returned to Louisville at once. William Gates was arraigned in court Monday, May 12, 1924, and released on bail. His case was subsequently dismissed, the police court judge ruling that he had killed Richard in self-defense, and a coroner's jury also absolved him of all blame. Hyde Conrad was held to the grand jury and charged with being an accomplice to kidnapping. His case was also dismissed as he didn't do very much. Now, Frank Cordell, that private detective who was also the muscle during the kidnapping, his part wasn't very important, but he wanted to let police know that he had met Richard Heaton as Peter Brooks, and that he had been told by Richard, and I quote, "I want you to help me get a man who's been stealing from me." Cordell admitted to helping capture Gates when he came into Richard's office and accompanied them to the house. He had left that night for Indianapolis and said that that was all he knew about the affair. Frank Cordell received 60 days in jail for his part in the kidnapping. So, case closed, right? It's over now.
This is an Erin story, so I don't think so.
Well, my friend, there is more.
I knew it.
So the day that William Gates walked free out of that courtroom in the Richard Heaton murder case, another problem was already waiting for him. Almost immediately after the acquittal, South Carolina authorities sent a telegram to the Louisville chief of police with a simple request. If Gates is released, arrest him. There was already a fugitive warrant waiting in Lake City, South Carolina. According to authorities there, William Gates and Richard Heaton had kidnapped and assaulted Lake City Police Chief W.R. Wall during a bizarre series of events in late 1923. This is
a W.R. Wall stand for William?
Probably.
I knew it. I knew it.
This is a stunning twist. So now they let Bill Gates go and they're like, no, arrest him. He was in trouble for kidnapping with Richard. What the hell?
They were like accomplices together.
So for weeks, Louisville newspapers had portrayed Gates as the victim, the man who had endured unimaginable torture inside that house. Now readers were learning that there's another side to this story. The man that they had sympathized with may have traveled alongside Richard Heaton while Richard terrorized other people. Even more surprising, William Gates did not deny being there. He admitted that he did accompany Richard to both Lake City, South Carolina, and Houston, Texas. According to Gates, Richard was hunting down two men he believed had wronged him by having affairs with Mrs. Heaton. Gates acknowledged that he was present when Richard Heaton handcuffed and detained, then struck Police Chief W.R. Wall before leaving him restrained in a wooded area outside Lake City. He also admitted that he was with Richard during a similar incident involving another man in Houston. Those admissions did not come voluntarily. Gates was forced to discuss the trips while testifying during the trial of Frank Cordell. Cordell's attorneys immediately seized on the contradiction. How could William Gates be treated as an innocent victim while accusing their client of participating in torture when Gates himself admitted to traveling with Richard during incidents that looked remarkably similar? And he witnessed similar tortures that he endured.
Mm-hmm.
So the judge warned Gates that he did not have to answer the questions that might incriminate him. And from that moment on, Gates refused to discuss what happened on those trips. And perhaps that silence spoke louder than anything else. South Carolina's governor formally requested that the Kentucky extradite William Gates so he could stand trial there. But Kentucky refused for the time being. Officials wanted every remaining case connected to Richard Heaton finished before allowing Gates to leave the state. By the time those trials ended, Gates had retained an experienced lawyer, and somehow an agreement was reached that allowed him to avoid standing trial in South Carolina altogether. Exactly what was negotiated has never been entirely clear. But once you know about those trips to South Carolina and Texas, it's hard not to look at William Gates in a completely different light.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe he was really blindsided by Richard Heaton's violence as he claimed. Maybe. Or maybe he understood exactly what Richard Heaton was capable of, and because he had already seen it with his own eyes. Even if Gates never struck anyone himself, he admitted to being present during kidnappings. At a minimum, that raises uncomfortable questions about how involved he really was. Which brings us back to one final question. When Richard Heaton called Gates and asked him to come to his Louisville office that day, did Gates bring his gun and slip that small revolver into his pocket before he left, not because he planned to kill Richard Heaton, but because he knew what could happen if Richard Heaton had decided he was his next target? After all, this wouldn't have been the first time Gates watched Richard Heaton tie a man up, beat him, and leave him wondering if he was going to survive.
Right.
If William Gates's version of these events are true, then the confrontation inside that Louisville office wasn't simply an argument that spiraled out of control. It was a moment when Gates believed he only had two choices, kill or be killed. And in the end, only one of them walked out alive. What we do know is that ultimately, William Gates was the man in the newspapers who had been called a victim. And he became the only survivor of the Louisville Torture House of 1924. My sources were contemporary Louisville newspaper coverage from April to May 1924, Associated Press crime reports from 1924 regarding the Gates Heaton shooting, court reporting and legal summaries related to William Gates's self-defense claim, the New York Times, newspapers.com, the historical crime detective's article Torture House by Lieutenant William Olagen,
Another
as
William.
told by Frederick Lord in the True Detective Mysteries from February 1930, and the podcast Southern Mysteries.
That was really good.
Right? It's twists and turns. It's all the things, right? The whole time I was just like, oh my God,
And
this is
old
so
Billy
crazy.
Gates.
Old Bill Gates up to his old shit again. I
Oh,
mean,
man, Bill.
it's like through the whole thing, you're like, you feel for him. You're like, man, this guy's like tied to a mattress and held for days and all
he's
of this
being
stuff.
tortured by some crazy man.
But instead, come to find out, he hung out with Richard. They went. He was on par with this whole thing. He was like, "Oh yeah, they're cheating with your wife. Sure, I'll go help you kidnap them, beat them, tie them up, and leave them places." So he was aware that Richard was capable of this. I think he brought those guns in self-defense.
Absolutely agree with you.
And then I think that one small derringer was hidden in his coat. I think he purposely hid it in his vest
Absolutely.
so that if for some reason he was kidnapped, he could get out of it.
I agree with you.
But that means that Frank Cordell, who was in the office when he was getting kidnapped, must have known this wasn't just like a little argument.
Right.
So I don't know that he was telling the truth. I just the whole thing is crazy to me. And the fact that no one really was called the police. No one throughout all the people, the business partner, the wife, all these people had all gone to the house and seen what was happening. They saw all the surgical things, the hatchet, all of that shit. And no one was like, I'll call the police. I think everybody was afraid of him.
I agree.
But you know what's crazy? And if you go to our Instagram page, I will be posting pictures of both men and the scene. And the crazy thing is, if you look at the pictures, I think Richard Heaton looks like he's just an ordinary guy. And I think that William Gates, looks a little menacing, to be honest. So it's kind of funny because the moment I saw their pictures, I was like, oh, this has to be the crazy one. And then I was like, oh, no, he's not. But also, yes, he is.
But yes, he is. Yes.
So it is a little bonkers. I hope you all enjoyed that story. Like I said, you can follow us on Instagram at Murder Not Murdering. We're also on TikTok, mnn.pod. We are on Reddit as well at Murder Not Murdering, and Autumn usually checks that. So do write us on there.
Yes,
Slide
please.
into our DMs if you would like to tell us about any cases that you have that you'd like us to cover. And thank you so much for listening to us. New episodes are out every Tuesday, and we appreciate all of you. So go out there, don't kidnap your friends.
Yeah, don't kidnap your friends.
Have a good week.
No.
That's a big no. Have a good week, and we will be back next Tuesday with 2 new cases.
Yes,
because
ma'am.
Autumn's computer will be fixed.
Dustin's
So exactly. All right. Well, thank you again for listening, and we'll see you next week. Bye.
Bye.